Let's return now to that speech by the French president last night in which he set out plans to ease lockdown measures over the next 2 months. Our business editor Stephen Carl is here with more. Stephen, firstly, remind us of the calendar that Emmanuel Macron has set for the reopening of businesses that have been closed.
So it's a plan in 3 parts starting this Saturday, which will see what were called non-essential businesses reopen for the first time in almost a month. That's bookshops, hairdressers, toy shops, that sort of thing. They're all to be allowed to reopen. Then from the 15th of December being the next stage, if the case numbers are below 5,000 per day, cinemas, theatres and museums will allowed to be reopened. And then from the 20th of January, again, if the case numbers remain low, restaurants and gyms will be allowed open. No date set, though, yet for when bars or nightclubs might be allowed to open their doors. So good news for some, particularly those who have been losing out because of the closure orders over the past months. Those small businesses, Euler Hermes estimates they've lost 4.4 billion euros in revenues over the month that they've been closed. So a lot of ground for them to make up. They're also going to have to obey new health protocols. So before, shops were allowed to have one person for 4 metres squared. Now it's going to be one customer per 8 metres squared. So they're going to have fewer people in shops as well. So we can expect to see people queuing up outside small shops waiting to get in this Christmas season as people are doing their pre-Christmas shopping. In Paris, businesses from the 1st of December will be allowed to set up stalls outside to be also serve customers there, as well as an effort to try and help them around those restrictions. Small business groups welcoming this news. There are 1.2 million people employed in these non-food shops and some 50,000 businesses have already gone bust. So it is an important sector of the economy as well.
And what about the businesses that still can't reopen?
So restaurants and gyms being among them, they're having to wait until at least the 20th of January to be able to reopen. Emmanuel Macron announcing further help for businesses who have been shut down because of these restrictions. It's an expansion of the government's Solidarity Fund, which has been in place since earlier this year. So it's now going to apply to all firms that have been forced to close, no matter what their size is. They'll be entitled to get grants of up to 10,000 euros per month or, and this is a new measure, 20% of their 2019 revenues up to a maximum of 100,000 euros a month to try and give those businesses a chance to be able to pay their bills, for example, rent or other bills that might still be coming in, even if the business is closed. That's going to cost, according to the Finance Ministry, 1.6 billion euros additionally. Restaurateurs saying they're disappointed by this, but they had been forewarned. The Prime Minister had already said it wasn't time to reopen restaurants in France. Hospitality, another big employer in France, almost 1 million people work in the hospitality industry. Many of them have been furloughed, so are getting most of their salary still paid by the state. But restaurants will now have been closed for 5 months of 2020, and that's going to be really difficult for them to recover from that. Meanwhile, nightclubs have been closed since March and no sign of them reopening at all.
So increasingly we may see businesses going bust and of course the impact then on the individual.
Yeah, that's right. Many people who have been put out of work, as I said, were on the furlough schemes. They're getting some of their salary, but people who are occasional workers or those who might have been looking for jobs have been hit in a different way because they haven't been able to get work. And President Macron did repeat a pledge in his telephone address that he'd originally made in October to expand welfare payments for those who were on the lowest incomes. These are people who are on a low income supplement called RSA. They'll get 150 euros extra. That's also going to go to students who are on grants. They're going to get an extra 150 euros, and there'll be 100 euros per child for families who are in receipt of housing benefits. Those payments are going to be made this Friday. They had been promised for over a month, but that money will go out this Friday to around 4 million households in France. The number of people who've actually in receipt of that RSA low income benefit has increased dramatically this year. It's up around 9%. So there are more people getting help from the state as well. Charities working in this area say they've seen a big increase in demand for food banks too. The government's economic recovery plan has 100 million euros to try and help those organisations to provide their services to people as well. There are, of course, warnings that poverty is going to increase because of this too. Interestingly, actually, last year in France, poverty had just started to come down, although there are still 9.1 million people at the end of 2019 who live below the poverty line in France.
Gosh, 9.1 million, sizable figures there. A pretty bleak outlook, Stephen, for France. But thanks for bringing us a clear picture there. Meanwhile, what's happening on the markets?
So we had shares around the world hitting record highs in trading on Wednesday. The Dow Jones index in New York hitting above 30,000 points for the first time in its history. This is over optimism about the transition of power in the United States and hopes for a COVID-19 vaccine. The optimism still visible today in European markets at the open. Gains across London, Paris and Frankfurt. Airline shares seeing more rises today. Air France KLM up 7% at the open in Paris. IAG, the owner of British Airways, also up by 2%. In Asia earlier, the markets more moderate there. There were some gains on the Nikkei in Tokyo and on the Hang Seng in Hong Kong, but falls in Shanghai and in Seoul.
Stephen Carroll, our business editor, thanks indeed for that.